सर हमारे साथ है शशि सर। शशि सर, आपका जो ये बुक के बारे में आप क्या सोचते हैं, क्या एक्सपीरियंस है आज जो मैम ने बुक किताबों में लिखा है, इस किताब में लिखा है?
It's a beautiful book. She talks about the transitions in India at the same time in the lives of her characters, in particular the lead character, Hindu, and her marriage and all that happens to her, and how she develops a sense of her own power at the end.
Thank you so much, sir, for talking with us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
May I request Ms. Rami Chhabra to come to the dais, please. And Ambassador Rami. Guests, esteemed speakers and dear friends, it's with great pleasure and deep admiration that I welcome you all to this evening's exploration of Becoming the Storm, a remarkable work by the gifted storyteller Rami Chhabra. This evening we delve into a poignant narrative that resonates deeply with the universal themes of individuality, resilience and societal transformation, set against the vibrant yet challenging backdrop of a newly independent India. A story of former UN Under-Secretary General and a former Minister of State for Human Resource Development and External Affairs. Dr. Tharoor's accolades include the Pravasi Bharatiya Samman, the Commonwealth Writers' Prize, the Crossword Lifetime Achievement Award, and the Sahitya Academy Award for an Era of Darkness, published in 2019. He has previously chaired the Parliamentary Standing Committees on Chemicals and Fertilizers and on Information Technology, exemplifying his multifaceted leadership and intellectual legacy. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Tharoor. Professor Veena Sikri, a distinguished former diplomat and convener of the South Asia Women's Network, SWAN, directed by the acclaimed theatre maestro Sarita Bohra, theatre director, Living Room. This will set the stage for an evocative and engaging reading of excerpts from the book by the immensely talented Deepali Bhasin and Jimmy Hasija. As we unveil Becoming the Storm, let us celebrate not only a literary triumph, but also the audacity of those who challenge conventions and inspire us to dream. And with us together, embark on a journey that I am certain will leave us inspired and profoundly moved. Thank you for your presence tonight, and let the evening begin with the Saraswati Vandana. Saraswati Vandana.
Good evening. The Living Room Theatre is well known to IIC audiences, but this evening we are here only briefly for a very special reason, a very, very special occasion, to offer a special tribute to Rami Chhabra, whom I and my family have known for over 6 decades. To my generation and those that followed, her television programs and newspaper columns were an inspiration, and I've always been in awe of this beautiful, vibrant, brilliant Rami Chhabra. She's beyond words. So dear friends, our music maestro VP Mishra offers a Saraswati Vandana to bless the book, following which he'll play the overture composed by my brother, late Suresh Malik, for his iconic film, Spread the Light of Freedom. Subsequently, Deepali Bhasin and Jimmy Hasija, both distinguished actors from my Living Room Theatre group, will read excerpts from Becoming the Storm. Thank you.
जय जय हे भगवती सुरभा तव चरणों प्रणमामि। जय जय हे भगवती सुरभारती तव चरणों प्रणमामि। जय जय हे भगवती सुरभारती तव चरणों प्रणमामि। नाद ब्रह्ममयि जय वागीश्वरि नाद ब्रह्ममयि जय वागीश्वरि शरणं ते गच्छामः। जय जय हे भगवती सुरभारती तव चरणों प्रणमामि। त्वमसि शरण्या त्रिभुवन ज्ञान विभामयि ललित कलामयि ज्ञान विभामयि वीणा पुस्तक धारिणी मदिरा स्थानो तव पद कमले मदिरा स्थानो तव पद कमले ऐकुण्ठा विषहारिणे। जय जय हे भगवती सुरभारती तव चरणों प्रणमामि। नाद ब्रह्ममयि जय वागीश्वरि नाद ब्रह्ममयि जय वागीश्वरि शरणं ते गच्छामः। जय जय हे भगवती सुरभारती तव चरणों प्रणमामि। प्रणमामः प्रणमामः प्रणमामः
Before I
for your exceptionally kind words and the special contribution by your theatre group this evening, which is making it so much more special. Bless you for all the lovely words you said. But first and foremost, I must thank India International Center itself for the honor it has done me through the years by according a place in its programs to practically all my books, the memoirs, monographs, and children's books, and now this first fiction novel, Becoming the Storm, that we are discussing this evening. I am grateful to IIC President Shyam Saran, Meenakshi Gopinath, Life Trustee, Director Srivastavaji, Secretary Wali, Tete, the program head, Rajiv Mishra and the library, and indeed to all the staff of IIC for giving me unstinting cooperation and support at all times. And now, before I go any further, I must first make amends for a silly slippage on my own part.
In such a manner, Rano smiled coquettishly, tilting her head sideways to welcome them, even as she finished applying the deep red lipstick on her full lips.
It's Indu who has me worried, she finally shared as she held his hand.
Shanti blinked in bewilderment. Indu, he repeated, somewhat dazed. But Indu, their daughter, she had never given them a day's trouble on any count, least with the studies.
Shanti sat waiting for Rano's explanation, a puzzled, perturbed expression settling on his face. She was quick to sense his unexpressed panic. No, Gio, relax. Nothing has happened. She reassured. It's just that Indu is now over 16, lives away from home and is getting subjected to all kinds of influences around her. She's now exhibiting very strong tastes of her own.
What's wrong with that? Shanti asked.
Nothing really, Gio. I was only giving an example of how she's begun to assert herself. And now she's good company. Her aunt Ammu often takes her out for movies. The other day, she even took her for coffee to Gaylord's, that new restaurant in Connaught Place. Oh, Gio, I shouldn't have bothered you. She's such a good girl. Comes and tells me all, where she goes, what she does. No, I don't have any problems. I was only sharing that it's time to begin to look for a match for her. See what a good one Kamal has got? A really handsome colonel from a good family, and he didn't worry Papaji for any dowry either. But let me first identify some good boys to show to Indu before I talk further with you about this.
But for once, Shanti was not to be deflected by her easy prattle. I have told you so many times that you should talk to Amnu and express a strong disapproval about her ways. You please instruct Indu categorically that she must come home straight from college. No gallivanting around town, not even with any of her aunts and uncles. Nor should she ever go to the cinema with boys and girls we don't even know.
Yes, Gio, she said meekly. But now, he was carrying on.
Please don't fill her mind with this talk of matrimonial matches. She's much too young for this. I have another vision for Indu. She must graduate, sit for the IAS exam, launch into a career, and be equipped to stand on her own feet before we think about marriage for her. She's capable of it. Please don't divert her.
She had not seen him get upset with her in a long time. Not since that day, now some years ago. Bajiwala Sant is famous far and wide as a holy man who can predict the future when he wants to. People flock to his ashram and it is difficult to even get to see him, much less talk with him. Rano was excited that he would be visiting them at their home.
The next morning, Bajiwala Sant arrived at their house, and at the precise moment that he disembarked from Chhabra, resplendent in a long.
Would you like to come across and pick it up? By the way, I have spotted Mr. Perfect especially for you, Indu. Just tell me when you will come and I will introduce the two of you. Marriage is not on my agenda right now, Indu laughed. And if you really have found Mr. Perfect for me, well, it will be interesting to meet such a person, if only to find out if such a person does exist. Let's meet. What about tomorrow? Tea at Gaylord's?
At Gaylord's, Veena exclaimed with exasperation.
Mr. Perfect, Ashok is late. When I clearly told him he had to leave early to be back before dark. And to do this after he spent so much time canvassing with me to get you to meet him.
But barely were the words out of her mouth that she began to wave wildly, half getting up from her seat to attract the attention of the tall, well-built man who stood at the entrance looking around expectantly. Catching sight of her waving, he nodded and strode across and apologized. Sorry, but something really important came up at the last minute, just as I was leaving.
What is it that women really need to be empowered? Is reflected through your work, but many of the issues come up in the book as well. First of all, I must say that the book is very nostalgic for anybody who's lived in Delhi. You know, I mean, imagine a time in Delhi where you could zip from Delhi Cantonment to Connaught Place to Old Delhi just like that. I mean, you couldn't even dream of doing it today. You know? You couldn't even think of ever having a situation where you would be torn between that. So it brings back very good times, because we did that. You know, I was actually living in Delhi Cantonment at the time. My father was in the army, and we would take the university special to go to Delhi University. So right across the same route that you described in your book, that Indu took, and you know, her meetings in Connaught Place, it brought back a lot of memories. Rajiv and I used to do a lot of those meetings, you know. so it was very nostalgic reading the book. But the issue that I want to really ask you about is an issue that we in the South Asia Women's Network are grappling with, and which is, you cannot talk about women's empowerment by itself. You know, there's so many seminars and others that you discuss, and women are there by themselves and for themselves. But this is wrong. You have to bring the men on board. And this is what is missing in our society. So the question I want to ask you is, the torment, was it a torment? Or was he not bothered about it at all? The role of Ashok, what he went through. I mean, he was so indifferent to Indu's travels, to the problems she was having with her in-laws, and how they were deliberately choosing to insult her and her parents. He chose to ignore all of that. Was that right? Because I know he's torn between tradition and modernity. I know the book is about Indu being torn between tradition and modernity. But I think Ashok's role is very important to understand the men of today and how women have to tackle them. So I want to ask you specifically that what was the turmoil in Ashok's mind, according to you? Was he really caring about Indu at all? Or was he totally selfish and said, you know, I have my job, I have my friends, and then I have my parents who have to look after. And all this contributed to that torment building up in Indu, and then she takes the last step and, you know, threatens to kill her husband. So I think that, what would your view on this?
You know, Veena, I don't think I have really gone beyond examining Ashok's turmoil in that. My agenda in writing this book was different, though I share the same values. I have spoken very often that you could, and not only spoken, but if you look at the inscription in this book, the book is dedicated for all the women who have ever struggled and the many who have emerged to become the storm, and equally for the many fine men who partnered the change process.
Yes.
So I'm very much with you on that point. But in writing this book, let me say, first of all, I wrote it during the COVID period. And what was my trigger? We were locked up at that time. The world seemed to be changing in ways that we really couldn't understand where we were going, what was happening. And I thought I owed it. Already in 1920, I'm losing my skills from my television days. Already 4 years ago, I've lived through the period that, you know, you say is nostalgic. I don't know how many will be nostalgic about it, even now in this room. And so I felt I needed to, one, document that nostalgia with some nuance, look back on that idealism, innocence, euphoria that seemed to permeate the atmosphere. And yet, there were problems there.
My mother, that I've always called you Auntie Rami, and now I can't do that on a stage like this. I shall greet you with an undue familiarity. But I've known Auntie Rami since I was very early teens, because her late Uncle Viren and my father were colleagues in the Statesman. It goes back a very long way. But I've always admired her precisely, as you said, for her writing on women's issues, your contributions to women's social development. I think one of the first things I read by you was your account of attending the UN Conference on Women in Mexico. And then we met soon after that when you came to my home in Geneva when I was early in my UN career. And you've done so much pioneering work and writing on all these aspects of women's development, social development, women's rights, empowerment. I think fairly recently, was it last year, you sent me that wonderful 100-page monograph, which was the last thing I read by you. So this was, first of all, a revelation to me that you would have thought of writing a novel, because after what one would think of as a career, a lifetime in writing non-fiction about women and writing very strongly and acquiring a reputation and expertise, that you've demonstrated it's never too late to actually embark on a new genre and pull it off. And I must say, as a reader, that you know, there's a loving attention to detail. You heard some of that in the reading we got here. The husband watching his wife dress, the Bawa driving off in a limousine. You've got lots and lots of details, and as Veena says, there's a lot of evocation of a Delhi that certainly I have never seen. I moved here in the early 70s to go to college, but the Delhi of the 50s and 60s, but certainly I think Rami has seen and perhaps seen firsthand as a very young girl, and slightly younger than the characters in the book, but she's able to describe what she's seen and evoke that so wonderfully. And I think that's very striking. The other theme that struck me was the whole tension between tradition and modernity being enacted through the life of this family. So it's a microcosm of a larger struggle taking place in India. India as a country, post-partition, going through all the trials and tribulations that we went through, happening, and there are casual references to events taking place, political events, and suddenly the incident of the freedom fighters being stopped on the border with Goa suddenly pops up, or the war with Pakistan is mentioned by the cat. So you see at different stages, there are things happening to the country in a very subtle way, because they're not just blatantly mirrored in what happens to the characters, but it's very clear that there are, and I'm going to come to a question in a second, but just to observe that there's all this there. Veena's point about the man, I think it's fair to say this is a woman's depiction of the family relationships, and you must not blame an author for identifying with her principal character, because that is the vehicle for her expression of her own concerns and things. But yes, you would say that the charming Ashok, the suitable boy, suddenly turning out to be quite that unsuitable. And as you say rightly, the indifference that he demonstrates to his wife's tribulations during her first pregnancy and so on, which then ends badly, that is troubling. And is it a character flaw? Is Rami, the author, trying to depict some of the insensitivities of men that they don't come across? Is it simply that as she identifies with her protagonist doesn't see whatever's motivating him because he doesn't express it to her? And that may be another message, that, you know, there needs to be a lot more communication. There are letters scattered throughout the novel, right? Letters written by the principal characters, and it's striking that the book ends with a letter by the now estranged wife to her husband. And I think that's very striking. The tension between tradition and modernity is also apparent, I think, in your own conflict. Why is it that the Babaji, this epitome of superstition and tradition, all that Nehruji would have rejected, actually turns out to be right? All his predictions are accurate. That's terrifying. I mean, why are you giving the Baba so much more agency than you gave Hindu? But anyway, that's another matter. The question I wanted to ask you was there in the process of writing a conscious effort to sort of show the transformations of India through the transformations of the characters? That is, that what the characters were going through, the same tensions were happening on the national level, and maybe even some of the sufferings. I mean, I certainly felt at one point that the financial troubles of the family were rather reflective of the economic troubles of India after independence, poverty, PL 480, God knows what else. It wasn't America coming here, but a brother-in-law. But nonetheless, I mean, you've got people coming in both to extract something and to give you something because you needed it. Was that consciously in your mind, or am I reading too much into it? And we all know from studies of Shakespeare that critics often read more into authors than authors might ever have intended. But I did find a sort of allegory there. Was it there in your writing? Were you intending to convey that?
No, I don't think, not on the point of people coming in from abroad or that aspect. But the allegory maybe was on a different plane. Two things. You raised the Baba, and I deliberately brought in a mystic thread. One thing, it appeals to a lot of people. A lot of people that believe in Babas, right? Secondly, I don't think this is so much ballyhoo either.
Okay.
I have seen predictions coming through.
All right.
So I thought that was an interesting literary device. I thought it was an interesting literary device to use. And I have to confess to you that really, when I started out writing, part of my attempt was the nostalgia of the past to be recorded. But I also felt that I had a very dramatic end in mind, not the end that I have here. I started out with that thought in my mind, and I said, I have a story. I will start with the 60s and then right into the end, this will happen. And then suddenly I found, maybe I'd written too much. It had piled up, in any case, but then it stopped. It just stopped. I could move to a novel. I just, this is what they say, that the novels write themselves sometimes.
They do. But Rami, it's interesting. So the Baba gives her this grim prediction, and she says, whatever the karmic thing, I will turn it into light. And there is a modern young Indian woman coming to adulthood, as India was coming to adulthood, saying she will make her own destiny. And yet, she is the one who becomes then the victim rather than the agent. She is acted upon, the Baba's predictions come right, everything goes wrong. At the end, we can't give away the ending, but
you can't give away the ending.
There is a reassertion of agency.
But they can't be dealt with a spirit of revenge and retribution. And so the message throughout the book really is of compassion, transcendence. I don't know if you saw that, but right through, Indu doesn't give up. And she fights for her dignity. She fights for her rights. But she does her responsibilities. And so I think that's the message that I would like to give to the young. That you must stand for yourselves. But the whole idea is we are not out to recreate this world into this us against them kind of thing. I love all the young men around me.
But as a man, I wonder whether you couldn't have made Indu try to communicate a bit more to Ashok.
Sorry?
Couldn't Indu have tried to communicate a bit more to Ashok? Look at Ashok. Okay, let's look at this for a second from a man's point of view. Here's this guy brought up in a traditional family. Everyone has their roles, right? The mother-in-law, the Lalita Pawar figure, has her very sacrosanct place. He marries because he's attracted to this girl, but once he's got that part of his life going, he's supposed to play another role, and the family takes over and oppresses her. I mean, I'm being simplistic, but you get the point. Now, my feeling was, if this bright young woman who was so self-independent, aware, and the one who was determined to change her coming destiny into light, I love that expression, couldn't she have said to the guy, listen, I'm going to, shake you by the scruff of the neck, you have to understand you're not seeing what's happening to me.
Is
it her age? Was she just too young to think of being able to do that? Or was she also a prisoner of roles that she couldn't play? The role of that independent college girl when she was
you're right
the victim.
in that sentence when you say that she was too young. Because I was going to say, Shashi, perhaps you not read the book finally.
Possibly
by
not.
Sentence you skipped through, because I have shown how she's made the attempts to talk to Ashok. But Ashok is too sophisticated. And she is too simple for all the independence that an 18-year-old girl, not even quite 18, flung into this situation. She doesn't know how to handle it. So, I mean, it's woven through. That's why I called it karmic weaves to begin with. But my publishers felt the book wouldn't sell.
No, this is a better title. It's a wonderful title. I think you wanted some questions from the audience. If anyone would like to ask Rami or us. There's a hand right there in the front.
Sure, yes.
Firstly, congratulations, Rami. As one of the children you referred to of your friends, I'm really impressed. My parents would be so happy if they had good leader to be with you. Now, I just wanted to ask you, because this is, as Shashi said, this is another phase in your life, but to take on the whole new writer's persona, writing a novel. You've written many other things, but writing a novel, how tough was it for you? I just want to hear of this, not about the subject, but just about the craft now of writing a novel. How did So tell us a bit about that. Which prediction precisely came true? Let's hear a bit about that too.
You could have to read the book for that. You can't give away too much, then they won't go out and buy
in
the
your
book.
personal experience.
There are predictions in it which come true.
In your personal experience.
In my own?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, you got me on that. I'm not a believer.
Oh.
I'm not a believer, but on occasion, I have gone to an astrologer with friends that are, and I'll give you one straight away. Somebody looked at my hand and said, "Aapko to sarkari bhari naukri milne wali hai." And I was an intrepid journalist at that point. The question didn't arise, you know. He said, "और अभी मिलनी थी, पर कुछ गड़बड़ हो गई, पर फिक्र ना करो, मिलेगी." Believe it or not, this did happen to me. Weeks later, Rajiv Gandhi handed me that additional secretary in the government of India, and there was Bandobadya saying to me, "You renegade," because I arrived into government from being a critic outside. So yes, I mean, I have come to realize that there are clairvoyant voices, and you know, there are a lot of quacks around us, but there are clairvoyant voices. There is something to this that does happen. Believe me, I went back looking for that astrologer. Could never find him.
I'm a parent of two already married daughters. My question is, do parents, after marriage, the girl's parents, have a role to play still to continue in her life?
Parents of the girl or the parents of the boy?
Parents of the girl.
Sorry,
Do parents of girls still have a role to play in their daughters' lives after their marriage?
No. Or is it going
I
to
would say that today, in fact, if there's one very positive development, that is that girls are asserting that they have as much right to look after their parents as the boys have to look after theirs. And one of the positive developments that is taking place is that there is, you look after my parents, I look after yours, our parents.
Yeah.
And this is really the philosophy that people like me and Veena and I'm sure Shashi, all of us want to bring about. We don't want to turn the world around so that what the alpha male did, now the alpha female says, "Oh, if you could have a couple of affairs, so can I," or you know, so on and so forth. But I think we need to reshape roles into much more positive directions. And I
हम
चलेंगे साथ
हम चलेंगे साथ साथ एक दिन ओ हमें विश्वास पूरा है विश्वास होंगे कामयाब एक दिन नहीं डर किसी का नहीं डर किसी का पूरा है विश्वास नहीं डरते कामयाब एक दिन हम होंगे कामयाब हम होंगे कामयाब हम होंगे कामयाब एक दिन वो मन में है विश्वास पूरा है विश्वास हम होंगे कामयाब एक दिन हम होंगे कामयाब एक दिन हम होंगे कामयाब एक दिन
Professor Meenakshi Gopi.
So I haven't read the book as yet, but I will be. I was very impressed with the whole launch and everybody's speeches. It was just wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Great effort, and I'm really excited about the book.
Thank you.
Organized the whole thing.
No, I didn't organize
Well,
anything.
she was there.
I
the
organized
music,
nothing.
The
I
music.
organized, I only got my living room theatre.
I know.
So I think that the book, I haven't read it yet, but it is addressed a very vital issue which I could make out about women suffering and empowerment and all. But yes, today I think the tables have turned. Women know how to carry themselves, take care of family, husband, children, in-laws. They've always done.
Okay, but it's too much
but
of a
I
balancing
feel
act now.
It's too much of, but I feel bad for the men who have the burden of balancing a woman, his wife, and the in-laws. I mean, and his parents. You know, in a very subtle manner. So I feel men should also
men
be
have to learn
today.
now.
Men are learning. I think I have two daughters. I think my son-in-laws are great. They really know how to balance and take care of their wives and their mother put together. So I think the key issue addressed here was fantastic, and I'm looking forward to reading the book.
And I think what's even more interesting is that the book is in the form of a fiction. So not only is it a delicious read, but it also addresses these pertinent issues of today.
Yeah.
So where it comes to dowry, where it comes to early marriages, you know. So
Which are still existing. Yeah.
but
Lots and lots of sensitive issues that the book actually covers. I think it touched every chord of my heart, and my nerves were also sputtering all over the place. I felt that it's opening up a very wide array of issues which are relevant to us. As we evolve, in our relationships, this kind of brings it out in a very lucid manner, and I think it's an unputdownable book. Like, I fortunately was reading some excerpts from it, but I still haven't read the last chapter because I didn't want to be shown on my face, but more than that, I was waiting to see it. So, to my mind, Rami has done a phenomenal job, and so is the case with the team that's supported her. It's a real pleasure and privilege to be a part of her team today. Thank you.
Both treated each other's families as their own. There would be no issues. That's what I think.
Yes.
You open your door to your husband's family, the husband opens to the wife's family, they all become one. No issues then.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I am teaching the IBDD program at the British School, and this was the most phenomenal experience that I had hearing the talk that was given about the book by Ms. Rami Chhabra.